So we're back with another wrestler ramble, specifically about a situation ramble. And today we're going to be rambling about, obviously, the turn that happened involving Kevin Knight, but more importantly, him going to the Don Callis family. Now, it's an interesting discussion because, as all you know, I assume if you're watching, you can probably tell I'm very positive about AEW. Don't get me wrong, I'm not above criticism, but I'm always, honest, and I do enjoy the product. I always do. I do think Kevin Knight's heel turn was something that was good. I feel like it was a good idea, and I feel like obviously they were building it for a while, and it made sense, and it was a good idea, and it honestly helps Kevin in the future. The number one thing that I think a lot of people have clocked on is, why has he joined the Don Callis family? And it's a fair point. Kevin Knight, frankly, shouldn't have joined the Don Callis family. He shouldn't have. I think I don't like saying it, I think it's lazy booking. I think it is lazy booking. Just because, and unless there's I don't like making videos like this because it feels a bit too soon. But I feel like this was just a point being made where it was like, because the whole thing was, Kevin Knight, after he had that heel turn, he come out and did his promo, and then he went back, when he was backstage, he had that segment where he was backstage, he saw Mac, and then Kyle Fletcher saw him and said, "Nice belt, Kev." And then obviously Don Callis come up to him and said, "Hey, Kevin, if you want to join, let us know, because look at all this extraordinary young talent, as Don is." And then next week, literally, it was just, we're going to announce our new member, it's Kevin Knight, and everyone was like, okay, it made sense. Like, he built it. It wasn't just out of nowhere, but it was like, oh, okay, he was just doing it. It's like, and then even the promo, it did feel like it's not going to be a long-term thing. Kevin straight up says to Don, "Listen, Don, I'm only here to win this second belt. I want 2 belts. You better fulfill me on that." And Don's like, we will, Kev, we will. As Don is. And it's just, like, it's not the fact that it wasn't built. It's the fact that it just symbolises that it feels like a lot of the heels do go to Don Callis family. And bear in mind, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit. I love the Don Callis family. I think the Don Callis family is hilarious. I think they're ridiculously entertaining. And I think the stable's incredible. And I've got no problem with it being a large stable. I think that kind of adds to it. I just feel like Kevin Knight being added to it doesn't help him. I feel like Kevin Knight doesn't need that benefit. I feel like for Kevin Knight to be as a heel, the whole thing was, okay, we're just going to let Kevin go on his own. And show that, or like if he had to join anyone, there was 2 options there. Swerve, which they built Swerve for a while, and it made sense. That's kind of like the implant that, was costing it, and honestly, Swerve could do with a faction. But then also, with the outside call was the Hate Syndicate. Now, the Hate Syndicate is it's a hard conversation for me to have because I'm white, but also, I don't want to just say that because, the obvious comparison is, why would he join them? Is it a race thing? And it's not, because they have constantly been teasing they need a 3rd member, well, 4th member specifically if you include MVP, because MVP is too old. Well, not that he's too old, but in his own words, he's too old. I've just spilt the bin, and I feel like with Kevin Knight that would have worked, and then you could have had the ego to, could have worked, and he's so different to Bobby and Shelton that dynamic could have been cool. I feel like that would have been a good call. I do. I think the Swerve call's the one that everyone wanted. But even then, you could have done it, but there's a few other heel stables. I just feel like, personally, I wouldn't have enjoyed the stable anyway. I feel like the whole point of the heel turn is to let him run. Just let him go, let him be him. And, well, let him be heel him. But it's like, Don Callis family, it just doesn't feel right. It's like, yeah, they lost to Kester, but then you look at the Don Callis family members off the top. I can name a lot off the top of my head. Okada speaks for itself. Kyle Fletcher speaks for itself. They're 2 specifically that don't really need Don, but they do because it's the heel. That's a lot of people are based around that. Andrade's clearly on I'm gonna leave, probably join LFI or some shit. That's clearly what Andrade's doing. And then if they treat Kevin Knight like Andrade, that would work. But Andrade's kind of like a separate case, where Andrade doesn't really need to be there, but they're clearly going to build towards that. El Clon, Rocky Romero, Trent Beretta, Lance Archer, Brian Cage, Josh Alexander, obviously. They're just a few off the top of my head. I'm probably forgetting people. Mark Davis and Jake Doyle, there you go. They're the people who the Don Callis family benefit, and then you have 1 to 2, 3, maybe 3 big guys. That's what kind of made the Takeshita stuff really interesting, because the Takeshita stuff was like, this family's getting so crowded, Takeshita isn't the top guy no more. That's what it was always built around. And now Okada come in, and then it was Okada and Fletcher. There couldn't be 3 top guys. There couldn't have. It wasn't viable. And like Mark Davis is kind of like a perfect example of what they need. Where Mark Davis is brilliant. Let's not Mark Davis is unbelievably good. And Mark Davis has kind of went on this singles run, and now he's become a bit more of a mainstay, a bit more of an important figure. But he's still not like the level of Okada and Kyle Fletcher and what Takeshita was. And I feel like they want Kevin Knight to be that level, but it creates that issue of, okay, the 3 of them can't work in the same faction. They can't. And I don't include Andrade in there because even though Andrade is that level, it's a different situation. It's very clear. And with Okada and Fletcher and probably Kevin Knight all being those 3, is there going to be a bit more tension? If that's what they're going for, that makes sense, and I'm all for it. And that eventually has Kyle either leaving and Kyle possibly facing, the repercussions for his actions for being a dick and turning on Ospreay and Takeshita. Obviously, you could even have Okada being pushed out by Fletcher and Kevin Knight, or Kevin Knight just eventually. I think Kevin Knight will leave. But I feel like that's the only way that works for me. For me personally, in my brain, that's the only way I can feel like that's the only way you can have a long-term story with Kevin. I do feel like they shouldn't. Again, I don't think they should have given Kevin the faction. I think Kevin should have been on his own, unless it was with Swerve. I think they're the only 2 that would be like, that makes sense. And the Kevin Knight, Kevin Knight with the Syndicate would only have worked if they just went, boom, we're getting the Syndicate back involved a bit more, because they're not involved anymore. I just feel like that was the one. That was the one for me. And it does symbolise that a lot of the talent that don't need the Don Callis family are joining the Don Callis family. And frankly, there should be heels that aren't in the Don Callis family. And there is, but it's not as strong anymore. And it's a very weird situation, because I'm a fan of the Don Callis family, but I don't think Kevin should be there. It doesn't benefit Kevin. And honestly, hands on heart, I think the only way this works if it does become a 3-way situation again, what they have with Takeshita. But frankly, it feels a bit soon to kind of set that up. But also, I just feel like Kevin's whole thing should be he's on his own. And that's why he's getting this ego, and then he's, kind of built that stuff. And frankly, Kevin should just be in a straight big feud with Speedball, whoever. It should have been bang straight big feud. Kevin wants the world title, but then, if Kevin jumps in and he's the world title guy for the Don Callis family, which bear in mind, you've got that stuff going on with Andrade, that's clearly a reason why he wants to bail. Okada made his intentions clear when Darby had the belt. Fletcher should be fucking in the world title scene 100%. You know what I mean? It just feels like Kevin, I just don't know. Are you going to keep Kevin in the TNT scene? Because I don't know how long that lasts if you want to really propel him. It's a very sticky situation, and it does make you think, is this the way? And I do feel like they'll rectify this. I do. I feel like a lot of people have made their opinions, myself included, right now. And I feel like they'll kind of, imply the turn sooner rather than later now. But I just wouldn't have done that. Unless you're going to really give him a meaty-ass TNT reign, which I wouldn't really be for. I don't really think that should be the plan. But I would have given Kevin just a big-ass... I just would have given him a big-ass feud with Speedball, whoever. I would have just went, fuck it, let's just build this feud. And they still can. It's still only been a short amount of time since they've done this, but there's definitely some stuff that needs to be ironed out. And honestly, I have faith that this will work out. I have this faith, because the biggest worry is, does this hurt Kevin Knight? And that's the last thing I want. I love Kevin Knight. I think he's incredible. I just feel like this is the one where it's like, okay, we need to kind of get this straight and quick, because this is the guy's big fucking turn at this point. This is clearly it. We need to get this right, because this could really hurt his career. And that sounds a bit hyperbolic and a bit extreme, but it's honestly true when you think of the severity of it. And I hope it does work out, and I think it will. I think he won't stay in the Don Callis family, but obviously the Swerve stuff's still here. If Swerve decides he needs a faction, I think Kevin Knight will join him, or they'll at least have some sort of situation there. But either way, there's a lot of stuff to go with Kevin Knight, and I have faith they'll do it, but they need to prove it, because this is a big task, and it's a lot of stakes on this one. Definitely really interesting. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Kevin Knight and the Don Callis family. Him joining the Don Callis family, the opinions on that. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know if you think it's stupid, whatever. And let me know what you think they should have done. But yeah, not a big fan of it, but I do have faith they'll hopefully rectify it. Touch wood.